Today, my bear stood on his hind legs and tried to beg for cookies like my dogs. I swear, if someone had filmed it, the internet would have exploded. But to me, it wasn't funny. It was terrifying, because I know what he is, and I know what he isn't. Let me tell you how he got here. It was late spring last year. Everything was blooming. The trees were full of birdsong, and the air smelled like earth after a fresh rain. I was walking my two rescues, Rocky and Boone, through the woods behind my cabin, when Boone suddenly darted off the trail. I thought it was a deer or maybe a raccoon, but it wasn't. It was a bear cub, small, wet, and whimpering beside the limp body of a larger bear. His mother. She'd been shot. Some bastard must have left her there to die. I froze. So did Rocky. Boone inched closer to the cub, tail wagging, nose twitching. And the cub whimpered and crawled into Boone's side, like he'd known him his whole life. I didn't plan to take him. Hell, I knew the laws. You don't just bring home a wild animal. But what was I supposed to do? Leave him there to die next to his mother? I wrapped him in my flannel and carried him home. The first few days were chaos. He cried constantly. He wouldn't eat. Rocky was cautious, but Boone became his shadow, licked his face, curled up beside him, barked when he cried. Something shifted in that little bear. And then, he followed Boone everywhere. Weeks passed. I bottle-fed him goat milk. He started sleeping in a pile with the dogs. He learned to wait by the back door. He even tried to bark. I named him Howie. It just felt right. By summer, it was like I had 3 dogs. Howie chased balls, rolled in the grass, came running when I whistled. But he also grew. Fast. His paws got huge. His back legs were thick. By the time he was 6 months old, he weighed more than Boone and Rocky combined. But his heart was still pure. He never showed teeth, never growled. Just love, just trust. Then came today. I was in the kitchen. Rocky barked at the door. I looked out and saw Howie, standing tall, front paws against the glass, tapping the window. And beside him, Boone, wagging his tail. I opened the door, and there they were. Boone did his usual spin move, the one he does when he wants treats. And Howie copied him. Awkward, clumsy, standing upright, then sitting down with a soft chuff. His eyes locked on the cookie jar. My heart clenched. He didn't understand. He thought he was a dog. But outside this house, the world saw a bear. A wild animal. A threat. And that's what scares me. Because love isn't always enough to protect the ones you care about. Later that evening, we went for a walk. Down the same trail where I found him. He still ran like a puppy. Boone chased squirrels. Rocky trotted along like a grumpy uncle. And Howie, he climbed halfway up a tree trying to grab a pine cone Boone had tossed. I laughed. But inside, something broke. Because deep down, I knew this couldn't last. Howie doesn't know he's different. But one day, someone else will remind him. And when that happens, I don't know what I'll do. But tonight, he's curled up on the porch beside Boone. His massive head resting on Boone's back. Rocky's snoring in the corner. And for now, just for tonight, we're a family. Even if the world wouldn't understand us. It didn't take long before the town started to notice. The first time was at the hardware store. I had Boone and Rocky on leashes, and Howie, still young but already massive, was trotting right behind them. No leash, just his usual dopey bounce and tongue hanging out. He stayed close, like always. Obedient, friendly, playful. But when we stepped onto the sidewalk, a woman screamed, dropped her coffee, pulled her kid behind her. All 3 of them, Boone, Rocky, and Howie, froze. She kept yelling, asking where the ranger was, if I was insane. That was the first time I had to say it out loud. He's not dangerous. He thinks he's a dog. That didn't help. Someone called the police. I got a warning. And after that, whispers started. At the feed store, the gas station, even church. They called him a wild animal. Said I was reckless. One guy at the diner muttered something about shooting him if he ever came near his property. I stopped bringing him into town. Back at the cabin, things felt normal. Howie would fetch sticks, jump up on the couch when he thought I wasn't looking, try to lick my face whenever I bent down. He slept in the corner by the fireplace, curled up between Boone and Rocky. But the bubble was cracking. One night, I noticed Boone staring at Howie a little longer than usual. Not fearful, just different. Like he didn't fully recognize him anymore. That weekend, I installed a higher fence around the back of the property. Not because Howie had done anything wrong, but because I knew what would happen if he did. People didn't see the sweet boy I raised. They saw claws, weight, potential danger. I hated them for that. but part of me understood. A few days later, something happened. We were on our usual morning trail, winding along the ridge. Howie loved that trail. He'd leap up onto fallen logs, sniff trees, and bounce ahead before circling back to make sure we were close. That morning, Boone yelped. A sharp, panicked sound. I turned fast. He was on the ground, paw in the air, whining. He must have stepped on something, glass, a nail, I don't know. But then, from the brush, something flashed. A red fox, mangy and wrong, maybe sick. It bolted straight for Boone, and before I could blink, Howie charged. Not like a dog, like a bear. His roar split the air. He collided with the fox, sent it rolling. The thing scrambled up and ran. Howie didn't chase. He just stood there, heaving, ears back, chest puffed. Boone limped to me. Rocky growled low, and I realized the trail had gone silent. Birds, wind, everything just stopped. We got home, and I treated Boone's paw. Nothing serious, but something was off. Howie kept pacing by the window. That night, he didn't curl up by the fire. He laid near the back door, watching the woods. Next morning, the sheriff's deputy showed up. Said someone reported a bear attack. Said he'd seen tracks, too close to the trail. I said it was a fox, that no one had been hurt, that my dogs had chased it off. He looked at me like he didn't believe a word, gave me a thin warning, said they'd be watching. That night, I sat on the porch with Howie. He rested his head on my lap, and for a moment, it felt like old times. But my heart was heavy, because I saw it, just for a second, in that fox fight. Not a dog, a bear, and it scared the hell out of me. A few days after the fox incident, something shifted in the air. Boone still limped a little, and Howie stayed near him like a guard. He didn't play like he used to. He watched more, waited, like he knew something was coming. And it did. It was late afternoon when I got the call. An older man up the ridge lost a goat. Said it looked like a bear had gotten to it. I swallowed hard. There were plenty of bears around here, real ones, but the timing was too perfect. I went up there that evening. Just me and the dogs. I didn't bring Howie. The man, Carl, met me out front. He didn't accuse me outright, but he didn't need to. Tracks led down toward your place, he said. Big ones. I don't want any trouble, but if that bear's yours. He didn't finish the sentence. Just look down the hill. I checked the area myself. The tracks were huge, all right. Could have been Howie. Could have been any adult bear. There was no sign of fur, no blood. Just scattered prints. When I got home, Howie ran to the truck, tail swaying, tongue out. Happy, normal, but there was something on his muzzle. A small smudge of dried blood. My stomach dropped. That night, I sat in the dark with the dogs asleep around me, and Howie curled up at the foot of the stairs. I stared at him for a long time, wondering, wanting so badly to believe he hadn't done it. But I didn't know. The next morning, a ranger knocked on my door. He was calm but firm. Told me they'd gotten more complaints. That a woman and her son had seen a bear near the school bus stop. That they were putting up alerts. And then he said the words I'd been dreading. We need to talk about relocation. I told him the bear they were looking for wasn't wild. That he was raised here. That he thought he was a dog. He nodded slowly. But he's not. When he left, I stood there for a long time, not moving. Boone nudged my leg. Rocky sat at the door. And Howie brought me a stick, like it was just another morning. That evening, I tried to see things from the outside. I watched Howie from the woods behind the house. He played tug-of-war with Boone, rolled in the dirt, licked Rocky's ear. It looked harmless, beautiful even, but I saw it now. His shoulders, the strength in his legs, the power he didn't even know he had. I stayed up all night. Around 3 in the morning, I heard growling. Low, uneasy. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped onto the porch. Boone was at the edge of the fence, stiff and alert. Rocky stood behind him. Howie was pressed against the gate, nose to the wind. There was something out there. I scanned the tree lean and caught the glint of eyes. Then a shadow. Another bear. A big one. Wild. Howie made a sound I'd never heard before. A half growl, half whine. Like confusion. Then he looked back at me. He didn't charge. Didn't bark. Just watched. The other bear turned and disappeared into the trees. I opened the gate, called softly. Howie came back in, pressed his head against my chest, and I realized he didn't know what to do. Not really. He was stuck between two worlds. The next morning, I called the ranger back, asked what relocation would mean, where they'd take him, if I could come. He said no. He said once he's out, he's out. That day, I didn't speak much, just sat with Howie. Boone laid across his paws. Rocky watched us with tired eyes. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew. This life, as it was, couldn't last. And the hardest part? Howie had no idea. To him, we were still just a pack. Still a family. I waited 3 more days. I don't know what I was hoping for. A sign? A reason to keep him? Something to prove to everyone, and maybe to myself, that he could still stay. That this life we built wasn't a mistake. But nothing came. No more bear sightings. No more ranger visits. Just silence. Heavy, stretched out silence. Howie kept playing like always. Chasing Boone, napping beside Rocky. He still brought me sticks, still tried to bark when the mailman came. But now, I couldn't watch without seeing the weight in his shoulders. The raw power behind every leap. The way the ground shook when he ran. One morning, I woke up and he was gone. Not far. Just outside the fence, sitting at the edge of the woods. Watching something. I joined him. It was a deer. Not running, not grazing. Just standing there, staring back. Howie didn't move. He just watched. Calm. Still. But the deer didn't flinch. Didn't see a threat. Or maybe it did, and just didn't care. That's when I knew. He didn't belong here anymore. He never really did. That afternoon, I packed the truck. I told myself it was temporary. Just a break. Maybe a few weeks until things cooled down. Maybe the ranger would change his mind. Maybe. I loaded blankets, food, water. Boone and Rocky jumped in like it was another fishing trip. Howie hesitated. He looked at the truck, then back at the house. I opened the door wider. He climbed in. We drove for hours. Past the lake, up through the fire roads, deeper than I'd ever taken them. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that settles in your chest and makes everything else feel loud. I found a spot, an old ranger shed, mostly collapsed, but dry inside. Left some food in a sealed bin. A worn sweatshirt. One of Boone's old toys. Howie sniffed everything, walked a few lazy circles, then sat down. Right in the doorway. I knelt next to him, scratched behind his ear. "You'll be okay here," I whispered. "You're strong, smarter than you know, and you've got this whole place to make your own." He licked my face. Soft, clumsy. Boone whined in the truck bed. Rocky stayed silent. Then I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I stood up, got in the truck, closed the door. I didn't look back right away. Just drove until the mirror showed nothing but trees. Then I pulled over and cried like a child. That night, back at the house, Boone kept pacing. Rocky laid in the corner, eyes open. I couldn't sleep. I went out to the porch and stared into the dark. No sound, no movement, just emptiness. The next morning was worse. I kept thinking I heard him. A thump by the window, a creak on the stairs. But it was all in my head. I tried to distract myself, chopping wood, cleaning the gutters, fixing things that didn't need fixing. Nothing helped. Boone found Howie's collar. He brought it to me in his mouth, tail still. Just stood there. I took it, held it, and for the first time in a long while, I felt completely alone. Because the truth is, I didn't raise a dog. I raised a bear who thought he was one. And in the end, he had to become what he truly was. A week passed. Then 2. Spring kept rolling in, all warmth and green. But inside the house, everything felt still. Boone wasn't himself. He'd sleep near the back door and jump at every sound. Rocky hardly left his corner. And I went through the motions. Coffee, wood chopping, cleaning dishes I didn't use. But part of me was out there, still in the woods. I didn't expect to see him again. Not really. But I needed to know. So I hiked back up the ridge. Took the same old trail. The ranger shed was still there, leaning more than ever. The food bin had been chewed on, but it was empty. The toy was gone. The sweatshirt too. But there were tracks. Fresh ones. And near the tree line, deep scratches in the bark. That meant he stayed. Or at least, he tried to. Back home, I set up an old trail cam. I knew the routes he used. I strapped it to a tree near the stream behind the house. It felt desperate. Maybe it was. The first night, nothing. Second, nothing. Third, motion detected. I barely breathed, pulling up the footage. Static. Then shapes. Then him. Howie. Bigger. Fuller. Wiser, maybe. He stood at the water, drinking, then looked straight at the camera. His eyes, they were calmer. Not scared. Not wild. Just aware. The next night, more footage. He didn't come to the house, but he circled it. I saw him pause by the back gate. He sniffed the fence, then walked away. And then, on the 7th night, he came onto the porch. It was around midnight. Boone started whining. Rocky barked once, low and confused. I opened the door slowly, and there he was. Not scratching, not growling, just sitting. His front paw rested on the doormat, and between his paws was something small. Metal. The old cookie tin. Dented. Scratched. Carried who knows how far. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there while he looked at me. Then he turned, walked down the steps, into the woods, and vanished. I didn't follow. I couldn't. He didn't come back the next night, or the one after. But every few days, I check the cam. Sometimes I see him, drinking from the stream, sleeping near the shed, watching the house from a distance. He never comes close again. But once, about a month later, I found the cookie tin on the porch again. This time, filled with pine cones, arranged neatly, almost like an offering. Boone sniffed it and wagged his tail. Rocky sat beside it for an hour, and I just stood there, heart full of something I still don't know how to name. He's not mine anymore. Maybe he never was. But he remembers, and that's enough.